Hello everyone, and welcome to 7th grade Math Module 2, Rational Numbers. In this video, we're looking at Lesson 2.4, Efficiently Adding Integers and Other Numbers. Our learning goal is to make sure we can use rules to find the sum of integers and determine if sums will be positive or negative. This will help us master Standard 7 NSA 1. Apply and extend previous understandings of addition and subtraction to add and subtract rational numbers. Unlike other lessons where I go through and I explain to you how it works, we're going to use some problems to help us figure out the rules that we can use to add our integers with same or different signs. First, I have two addition problems with integers that have the same signs. So my first problem is 3 plus 5. They are both positive, and I know that I can start at 0, move 3 units to the right to my first addend, and then move 5 more units to the right for my positive 5, and I would end up at positive 8. You guys are very used to adding these positive numbers. With negative 3 plus negative 5, the only thing that changes is the direction I go on my number line. So I start at 0. Because my first addend is negative, I go left 3 spaces to negative 3. And then because my second addend is also negative, I go left again 5 spaces, and I end up at negative 8. So what do these problems have in common? Well, for both of them, I know that 3 plus 5 is 8. So the only thing that really changed is when my addends were both negative, my answer was also negative. So the rule that I can use for adding integers with the same sign is I can add the absolute values and then use the common signs. So now that we have our rule, I want you to look at these problems and pause the video. While it is paused, see if you can figure out whether the answer will be positive or negative without finding the answer. How did it go? If you went through and just used our rule to look at the types of numbers you were adding that all have the same sign, you should be able to tell if the answer is positive or negative. All of our problems that had only negative addends would have negative answers. All of our problems that have positive addends have positive answers. So we have a pretty straightforward rule for same signs, but what about when we're adding numbers with opposite signs? I have two examples for us to help us come up with a rule. First is positive 5 plus negative 3. If I start at 0 and go right 5 to my positive 5 addend, I then would go left 3 for my negative 3 addend, and I end up at the number positive 2. If you notice, my lines cross each other, and my positive 5 line is longer than my negative 3 line when I end up at my positive 2. Let's look at what happens with 4 plus negative 7. Just like before, I start at 0, and I'm going to move right to positive 4 because it is a positive number. Then, since my second addend is negative, I am moving left 7 spaces. This time I'm moving farther than my positive number line went, and I'm crossing back over 0 to end up at negative 3. So I crossed over my line again, but this time I went past it. So what do these have in common? Well, in both problems, I'm crossing over lines I already drew and covering ground that I've already covered before on my number line. The answer that I ended up getting is the difference between the lengths in my number line with a positive or negative sign. So the difference between 5 and 3 is 2. The difference between 7 and 4 is 3, and my answers were 2 and negative 3. So the rule that I can use when I'm adding with opposite signs is I can subtract the absolute values of my numbers, and then I used the sign of my integer that had the greatest absolute value, the integer that was the farthest from 0 and had the longest line on my number line. So now that we have our rule, we can look at these problems here, and without calculating the answer, we should be able to tell if our answer will be positive or negative. You can pause the video here to try it on your own. How did it go? If we used our rule, we should have been looking for the number with the greatest absolute value. When we find our number with the greatest absolute value, that number's sign will be the sign of our answer. So when our positive number was greater, like in letter I, we would have a positive answer. In all the rest of our problems, our negative number had the greatest absolute value. It was the farthest number from 0. So the rest of these would all have negative answers. What does this video make you wonder about finding the sums of integers? What does it make you wonder about determining whether your sums will be positive or negative? Write your questions down so you don't forget them. Then you can try to find answers online or ask a classmate or teacher. Thanks for watching, and when you're trying this on your own, remember, if you learned from your failures, then you succeeded.